This is another report about life in the time of the coronavirus epidemic, only it's about 4 or 5 or 6 months ago. Bottom line lesson we pull away from this epidemic has nothing to do with our vulnerability to a serious health hazard. No, the bottom line lesson is the awful threat posed to our lives by the government, especially when they are trying to save us. That adds an edge of urgency to their folly. In that situation, we yield everything to them, and we turn into niggers. And once you cross that line, it may be impossible to recover. Maybe it is a health issue after all, the health of your humanity, your soul. Another mass shooting, 8 people dead and many wounded before the killer shot himself at a FedEx facility in Indianapolis. The combined weight of these terrible killings is going to result in strong restrictions, period. Yes, the death of 8 people is terrible, but I think the shootings will cause the PM and his people to create legislation on automatic weapons, bump stocks, and background checks, and not enough people will oppose them. Given the pressing situation, they can't. And the NRA is bankrupt, so laws will be passed, and they will be bad laws. The real target of those opposed to guns is the Second Amendment, but I don't think it will get that far. A few bad laws will be trouble enough, however. And the problem is mental health. We stopped funding mental institutions about 40 years ago. Now we have the homeless and people going crazy with a gun. Also, many mentally ill people in prison. As a society, we could not be doing a worse job when it comes to mental illness, but it doesn't go away. It tears us apart in many different directions. A demonstration last night in Minneapolis turned violent, with people throwing bottles and rocks at police. About 100 were arrested. The people of that city have to be fearful, and I think the jury in the Chauvin trial, though sequestered, I think they must be fully aware of that fear, and I think it will have to influence their verdict. Now it's a shooting in a Wisconsin tavern, 3 dead, 2 wounded. They are going to pass some laws. I just read a book entitled A Brief History of Vice, or How Bad Behavior Built Civilization. The author's theory was that society involves the gratification of impulses, and many of these impulses are satisfied by what society calls vice. He covered them all. Sex, of course, alcohol, sure, the whole range of drugs, coffee, belligerence, on and on, maintaining all the while that these things help to shape our modern world, and providing detailed recipes for many primitive forms of all the chemically based vices. I thoroughly enjoyed the book, and at least half believed it was all true. How could I not be persuaded by someone who wrote, "Mixing booze and food is such a good survival strategy that the only monkeys who fucked enough to pass on their genes were the ones who drank." I think the author would have handled this epidemic by going into strict self-quarantine with an enormous stash of psychotropic drugs, bread, water, and Spam. He'd think of it as waiting out the storm. When I hear people talk, all the talk is about the end of the epidemic. It's over. And it feels like that is so. But the numbers are way up all over the U.S. and in the world too. According to the numbers, not only is the pandemic not over, it's getting worse, gathering steam. 5 people were shot in Louisiana. I have heard the Chauvin defense referred to as surprising and lackluster. I wonder if the defendant accepted the inevitable and instructed his lawyer to go easy and mount a very passive defense. He's going to jail for a very long time if convicted, and George Floyd, a career criminal, will be remembered as a martyr. Just in case, the National Guard is on standby. Minneapolis kids are going virtual in school this week, and the NBA is prepared to cancel games if a controversial verdict comes back, if he's acquitted or convicted of a lesser charge, or the jury is hung, unable to reach a decision. The potential for trouble here is huge. That also has to influence the verdict.